Right, recording is a go. Cool. So I tried to throw together a couple thoughts on what to chat through today. So I'll share my screen, and we can kind of talk through these things. I don't know how far along everyone is with these concepts, so interrupt me if you think this is covering old ground and we just want to go through some of the assignments. But I do want to make sure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to sort of the technicals that are necessary for these. So I have anatomy of nested ifs. Oh, geez. Anatomy of nested ifs, anatomy of a switch statement, the difference between the two. Right now, the difference is less relevant because we're being forced to use switch statements for all of these. And then, we'll wrap up with kind of a talk through of the logic for, if anyone's struggling on any of the questions, we can go through there. Does that make sense?
Works for me, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to take, I saw Mona come off mute for a second there, but I didn't hear her. But I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, I said yes.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So real quick, nested ifs, I think most folks have, been working with ifs for a bit now because we did them for assignment 3. But, the idea is it's pretty simple, right? You have your if statement, then your condition for the if statement. And then within the block, you have what you want to execute if the condition is true. When we nest if statements, it's just a matter of throwing another if statement within the condition of an existing if statement. I'm not sure if folks are tabbing in the same way that I kind of did here. So you can kind of see that like this if statement is self-contained. And then all of this stuff kind of is part of this else statement. Are you guys doing that as well, or?
I tab in, yeah, just so it like lets me know when I'm still inside that, like in case I'm doing multiples, I'll tab, else if in as well, a little bit depending, but because I don't want it to get like too far in. But like you say, it helps you see where does it start and end.
Yeah. So definitely encourage folks to do that. Does anyone have questions or issues with doing nested ifs? Otherwise, we can move on relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think for this, do we use nested if for this assignment?
No, so don't use nested ifs for assignment 4. We should only be using switches.
All questions, because I wrote about 2 questions in if, not all the questions with switch.
Yeah, so
you could probably do both. I think
you can
right?
definitely
like,
do both from an approach perspective. I did message in Telegram asking. I
think all the questions have the switch like for it. You can use switch.
Yeah, and I think like Jason's saying, or yeah, like you asked him if you can do switch for all of them because it's a switch assignment. It's probably good.
Yeah. So I think he doesn't say like you have to use either.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've used nested ifs, I don't think he's going to penalize you. But it is good, as Ryan said, to recognize that you can do it either way, right? In terms of nested ifs themselves, any sort of concerns on how to use them?
In search of what?
In terms of nested ifs, no concerns on how to use them, right?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, I think that's, as much as I didn't do great on the last assignment, I still at least get how to use that.
Sweet. So the anatomy of a switch statement then. So this is slightly more complex. It does solve the problem in pretty much the exact same way as a series of if statements, but it's more limiting because you're only looking at a single variable, at least to my understanding, and at least as far as has been covered in the classes so far. So the anatomy is, you start with your switch, which kind of declares that, hey, I want to do a switch statement. And then you put the specific variable that you want to use within the brackets. And then you start your code block, which is this whole chunk. And then it's basically just a series of case, the condition that you want to check for, and then a break statement. The break is always mandatory, so never forget the break, otherwise it'll always break and you will never, it'll be really hard to figure out what to do and to troubleshoot. And then it also always has to have a default option at the bottom. So those are kind of the three core fundamental pieces. You declare the switch, you have a condition, you have a default option, and then you always have the break at the end. Does that make sense to folks? No concerns with that?
Yeah. The case condition that you've got listed 3 times too, it's like you said last time, it doesn't matter because even though it's the same name, the breaks and stuff will create basically like almost like the way if statements do, where it looks at them separately, even though they have the same, like that case condition. Or would you change that?
Well, the condition would be separate. So like if you wanted to, so actually I have an example here. Like if you wanted to go, like this is a very simple example of a switch statement, right? So we have a switch on my string. So I want to check my string. And depending on the value of my string, I want to return different things. So the first sort of check is if it's an A, then I want to write my string as A. If it's B, then I want to write my string as B. And if it's C, then I want to write my string as C. And otherwise, which is the default option, I want to write my string is not A, B, or C. Right. So if we run this, my string is A, it hits this first case, it triggers, and then it, ends, right? If we change it to B, now case A doesn't apply. It will go down to case B, and run this sort of statement between the case and the break statement.
Yeah, kind of like the if say, it's like within an if.
Exactly. Like you can rewrite this,
as ifs or whatever.
My string equals A.
I noticed in the textbook too, it did even describe circumstances. I think it was like 500 different rates or something. And it was like, you wouldn't actually use switch. It would be faster to use if. So there was like still, certain problems where it's not like one's just necessarily better than the other.
Yeah. And I think with more experience, we'll figure out, which one is more appropriate whenever.
One thing I was going to ask, just because I noticed it on the last one, is with switch, is it, because I think that's what I'm running into with challenges on the first question, is like variable designation, just does it require, so you're assessing it as a string, but then like I think what I'm running into in the first question, at least, is I'm trying to use like a convert to integer from my character that they select. And it's just, I don't know, I'll have to probably ask you about it specifically after, but it's funny. It's like I said, my logic, I understand how to do it, but with these switch statements, I just can't get anything to run.
Yeah, so I guess backing up a bit, like I declare my variable up here, right?
Yeah.
So I declare that this, like my string or my stir is a string. And I can assign sort of the value to it here. So I could break up the 2 statements if we wanted to, make it a little bit more clear. And then the case here, you don't need to do anything to, the condition here just has to align with the type of
variable type
of the variable here. You don't have to, declare it or convert it or anything like that. Right?
Okay.
You just like,
I think that's what I was doing too much, basically, because I had seen an example that was using that enum, like the enum for the range. Have you guys seen that in the textbook at all?
I have not.
Enum, it's like enum is a function basically where you can use this thing where you use commas to separate. So it like you write 1 equals this first variable, but then you use commas after, and it just assigns 2, 3 to those. So I wrote that in like my like, yeah, basically up there. But I don't know, it didn't run. This looks a lot simpler though.
Yeah, I'd avoid overcomplicating. I'm not familiar with the enum function.
It's an example in the textbook. I was just trying to kind of like, it wasn't the thing I had originally written, but I was just like, maybe I can get this to like, alter or whatever. But
yeah, I would stick to the sort of the structure that we covered on, I guess, last Friday, more so, where you just have a variable, it has a specific type, and then all of your case statements compare it with that type.
Yeah. Okay.
Because basically what this is doing in other terms is it's the same as, if my stir equals A, right? Like this case A is equivalent to writing this.
Yeah.
From a logical perspective.
I think I was like basically trying to convert when I don't actually have to. You know what I mean? Like I can just assess it like you're doing there, where it's just you're assessing it as this string character of A, or yeah.
Yeah, I would. So generally speaking, at least how I've approached all of my code, and I don't know if Mona and Amina, you guys are doing something different or you're finding success in another way. But for any of my if statements, any of my switch statements, I set up all my variables before, right? So if in the event that I wanted, to do the switch on my int instead, so that would be an integer, and I needed to prompt our user for an input. So I've converted it above like here to make sure that what I'm putting into
is an integer, yeah.
My switch statement is, yeah, exactly, it's an integer already, instead of trying to do it within the switch statement.
Might be a silly question too, but I noticed there you have like the letters don't have any quotations around them I'm just trying to think basically like when you're introduced or when I'm using character as a thing, does it have like single quote around a double quote like you have there, the double quote?
Yeah, so double quote would be a string. Single quote would be a character.
For character, okay, that's what I thought, but I think I just need to change it to using a string as an approach versus character.
Yeah, that would work for like.
I was trying to like I was trying to assign it like ABC to 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? And using that methodology, whereas I don't need to.
Yeah, you can definitely go direct. Like for the first one here, you can definitely go directly.
Yeah.
I don't know, Amina, Mona, you guys pretty quiet. No issues with switches and cases?
I have no issues.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, it broke. Cool. I guess then, Ryan, any more questions or?
Well, you can kind of continue. Like what you're doing is helpful anyways. So if you have a bit of a plan of what you were going to show.
I mean, beyond this was like the only technical part that I wanted to go through.
No, this was definitely helpful. I haven't, because like I got kind of stuck on that first one. I haven't really read through very many of the others, but I guess in some way, like one thing I'd be curious about is, I guess I just don't feel like I have that intuition to be like, okay, this needs this type of bracket and this type of colon and this type of semicolon. And I'm kind of curious as to like, that I'm like, where are you guys finding that stuff just from the notes? Like, because I'll scroll back through even from lecture notes and I'm like, I don't know, I just can't find stuff that's giving me that information. other than
Uh,
searching up like sample code, you know?
Yeah, I just kind of straight memorize it, which may not be sustainable. I don't know, Amina, Mona, where are you, like in terms of
Do you guys have a different approach, or is it the same thing as Jason?
I use
think
the same
so.
approach. Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead, Amina. Go ahead.
Yeah, I use the same approach, just like Jason was saying. So it's just the same thing. Like I put my variable in the switch, and then I put a case, maybe case 1, case 2. And if the case doesn't have like 1, I just searched on the internet and it says like you use case variable expression when
Okay.
this is this, yeah. So
No, I think
sometimes
that's what I
when
need to do more of. Have you noticed any website that comes up specifically, like one of the websites that you use a lot for that sample code that comes up, or you just choose different ones each time?
I don't know, I just use different, and I see the
Okay.
one which I understand better.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes
Cool.
some things like seem confused, but sometimes I understand and I just
Yeah.
continue with that.
Because I've been like using the textbook a bit for, you know, obviously for examples and understanding, but yeah, it's weird. I don't find there's really ever been content like this where I'll like,
So like a question, maybe there's a question about the day, maybe when they say the hourly pay rates is less than 5. So you can't use case 1 or case 2 in that one. So you have to say like when the rate is less, that's like you have to use the variable expression, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay, Mona, you can go forward.
It depends on what kind of input I must use. For example, if it's int, I prefer to have a definition for the int, like like Jason has done the same. For example, my int equal convert that to int 32. And after that, it's not necessary to put cases, the number in front of the cases between quotations. You know, it's obvious that it's an integer. But if it is it's a string, you have to put your variables in quotation. Just this, it was simple. I had no issues with that.
Jason, did you have any problems in this problem set where you did have to use attributes like that? So you had to be like the person's going to choose A, B, or C, but you're attributing A, B, or C to 1, 2, or 3 to come up with an output, or you didn't do that at all?
it's a good question. I don't think I needed to.
Okay.
Because so to me, that sounds like, so if we kind of just open up a new tab here. So you're saying sort of step 1, we get A, B, or C. And then step 2, convert A into 1, B equals into 2, and then C into 3. And then do something based on 1, 2, or 3. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It's like I say, it introduced that enum statement, which was like literally between using and class. It was way up at the top, or it might have been between class and static void, where the enum statement was listed. And that's actually where it had that information. But yeah, it's like ahead of what we're doing, and I just couldn't make sense of it. It's on page like 164. It's pretty late in chapter 4, but it's just the section where I could find examples on Switch. So I was just trying to read through it and get a better understanding of it.
I see. Yeah, I mean, so looking at this example, I don't see why we wouldn't go straight from step 1 to step 3, right? Because if A
you
maps
don't have to
directly
make
to
a lot of
1,
plan.
you don't need to do the intermediate conversion, right? I don't see why we would. That just seems like extra code for no benefit.
For no reason, yeah.
Anything else? Otherwise, we can kind of talk through a couple of questions and we can see if everyone's on the same page in terms of the logic and stuff like that. All right. I'm not sure where everyone is as well in terms of the assignment. I managed to finish it off yesterday. I think Amina, you mentioned you're on like 7. Ryan, I think you're just kicking things off last night.
I've spent like 10 hours doing nothing on one.
Oh dear.
Would you please, sorry, I interrupt you.
That's okay.
Can you go through with number 9?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
this one was
I wrote about that and I finished it, but I'm not sure about it. Go through with the last picture, last part. It's display B plus I. What is I?
Oh, I just ignored that.
This is my problem. I ignored I.
Yeah, I just put it as P plus Q, P minus Q.
I think he even mentioned to someone's comment that might have been a typo.
Oh,
I know there was one.
Sorry, it's this. This should have been QI.
Oh, okay.
This should be QI.
Yes, this should be QI. Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, I think there's something. And about the another question that I left it was about exactly the question above the 9 about the provinces. Yeah. I couldn't understand what it means.
Okay. So yeah, we can start by breaking this apart. I think this is the one where there was a typo. The EA here is useless, so we'll just delete that. So it's basically saying that HST
what
exists.
Is HST?
So oh, are you not in Canada?
I am in Canada, but I'm not familiar with something like
okay.
this.
So HST is the harmonized sales tax. So it's a tax that exists. We pay it in Ontario. It's a goods and service tax. So when we buy something, we have to add on HST.
Is it still split in provincial and federal, or is it now just one? I think it's just one, eh?
I don't know anymore.
There used to be like PST and the other. So one was a federal component and one was provincial. But I think now it's just, it's not on certain stuff. Like we don't have it on food, but it's on, like any material products, basically. TVs, stuff like that.
Thank you.
So what this is saying is, so if we break it apart, HST, so this is true for Ontario, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and BC, right? And so from there, we can infer that HST is false for everything else, right?
So, so we should put all the provinces in case, in case, for example, I don't know, what should I prompt for user?
Yeah, so that's the. So I think, so what I used was this array of possible provinces here. So I was looking at these provinces. I split these into whether HST is present or not. So Ontario, it's present. New Brunswick, it's present. Oops,
The user should enter a province name, and our program should display if this province should pay task or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I've done it.
Oh, okay,
I
nice.
was not sure, but but not with switch, with string array. I don't know if it's okay or not, but I think I should change it because it's mentioned about the switch. Switch
He did.
statement.
I know
Yes.
he did say though, if you have a bunch of other questions in Switch, he mentioned arrays as being like more advanced. So
Mhm.
if you have one running and you've done a lot of other Switch statements, I don't think I would maybe even leave it because it kind of shows him you use something new, like especially if it runs.
Mhm.
Because he always tells us, or at least that's, he's like, look for stuff. And if you find stuff that's what we haven't covered and you can make it run, that's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I had asked him about using switches in assignment 3,
Okay.
and he was fine with it. I think we're covering, I don't know when we're going to be covering arrays. I'm not too familiar with them myself, so I didn't try and use one here.
Okay, sorry.
Thank
Can
you.
you explain about question 9?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure. So this is interesting because traditionally, and how I approached this one initially was using an if statement. It's a little bit awkward to do it with case statements, but it's a good, I think it's a good practice to try it with cases. But the idea here, and we can break, it might be easiest to kind of approach this from a sort of a pseudocode perspective. So like if we start, I guess where are you getting stuck here? Hello?
I would say something, but I haven't even
Amina?
looked at this
Yeah.
one.
Amina. She's not there.
Oh, sorry, I was talking and I was unmuted. So what I understood is from the start, you have to prompt for A, B, and C.
Mhm.
So then if A is 0,
Mhm.
you have to display an invalid input for A.
Mhm.
So and that is done. And then if A is, sorry, for the false one, does it mean that if A is not 0, then you go for the P and D?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you say, like, okay, so you say if A is 0, then you say else, and then you go to the other one, right?
Yeah. So that's an option, right? So you can have, the basic if statement.
Yeah, or even
you
you can
mentioned.
say about the switch too. I think it's the same thing. You say switch and then default.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then after that, I don't understand like about the PD and where are all these coming from?
Mhm.
When you just prompted for A, B, and C. So this.
Yeah. So for example, if we look at P, so the equation for P is P equals 2 or negative B divided by 2A, right? So what do we know? We know B is provided by user, and we know A is provided by user. We know A is not equal to 0, right? Because if it was equal to 0, then we get a divide by 0 error and it would explode. So from here, knowing that these 3 facts, we can calculate P, right? Because we know, like, if the user gives us B equals 2 and A equals 3, we can calculate, in actually float P equals negative B divided by 2 times A.
Oh, I get it now. I get it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And in theory, this should print something. Oh no, it broke. I've messed up somewhere, but you get the idea, right? And then that kind of, we calculate some values here, and then we reuse them for another sort of if statement or case statement, and then we again calculate a bit more.
So for here, for the first switch statement, will it end at P and D, and then you start another one there?
So,
or is it the same one?
I ended up nesting case statements. I'm not sure if Mona approached it the same way, because I didn't want my program to end until everything was done, right? Because if you have a, if you have a switch statement, and it spits out the values for P and D, then another switch statement that tries to calculate, Q, QI below. What happens is if this condition, this invalid input for A, won't circumvent this one, if that makes sense.
That's because it's not nested, you said?
Yeah, because so what'll happen if
It'll trap it.
Well, if A equals 0, it'll be like, okay, like if you say actually switch on A and case A or case 0, give up, right? This is your error statement. So it'll give up on this switch statement, and then it'll go into the next one and try and do this. But it won't be able to because your P and D wouldn't have been calculated. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well or not.
No, it makes sense. It's like you have to use the nesting to make sure it's a fully connected, like almost loop from that display invalid input for A all the way down to the stop as well, versus it getting stuck.
Exactly. Yeah. Does that clarify things, Amina? I'm not sure. And you are unmuted.
No, maybe. Can I explain maybe from what I understood and see if I'm
sure? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this is how I think I should approach this. So first thing, prompt for A, B, and C. And then you open a switch statement and you say if A is 0, if A is 0, you display invalid input for A. And if that is not correct, if A is not 0, you say that one P is equals to minus B over 2A. And then, so under that, you open another switch statement within the first switch statement, and you use the second condition that if D is greater than or equal to 0. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think I wrote down what you were thinking. And yeah, this looks like it makes sense to me. You prompt, you open the switch, 0 goes directly to error, and it closes everything. Otherwise, you calculate the P and the D, and then you do another switch within this one, which points you in either direction, and then you end it off.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll have to leave about 3:10, if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries. This is for all of us, right? So can't make the whole thing, and I think the meeting's gonna kick us off in soonish as well, because Zoom is has a limit. But yeah, I guess anyone else have any specifics that they wanted to kind of walk through from, the same way that Amina walked through 9?
Like I say, I haven't really like looked past 1, but I think being able to get 1 to run will give me some it's funny, I either like get stuff running and it goes and then I do well, or I just like hit the wall. So I think this will help me get a little momentum at least.
Awesome. That's good. Mona, anything from your side?
Everything is perfect. I have no issues with questions, and but I should change some if to switch, because I saw 2 or 3 questions by if, because the question didn't mention about we have to solve it switch. So I went through by if. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same as well. It was only until like question 10, which kind of repeated from assignment 3, that I was like, wait, hold on.
You're like, this can't be right.
I can't just copy my code from assignment 3. I
Yeah,
should be
yeah.
doing something different here.
Something's
That's when
gotta
I
be
sort of
different.
went back and did switch statements for everything.
And did you find probably some of these questions it was harder to use a switch than it was to use your if?
I
Like,
think
were
I
there any
definitely
where it was-
preferred using an if statement for the quadratic
yeah.
equation, because it's very much a sort of true-false statement. I think to me, with like if it's just one option versus option 1 versus option 2, it's easier to use an if statement. But it's not overly difficult, I don't think, to use the switch for at least for these examples.
Yeah, like there wasn't anything where you did it the other way and you were like, oh wow, it's like twice as long or stuff like that. None of them are long enough, I guess, to get like that, really.
Yeah, and then this week there wasn't any monstrous questions like 18 from last week. That one was.
I won't even lie. It was like 11:34, and I was just like, I don't even like. I was just like, I'm not even going to try and submit something for it. I just like submitted what I had. I was like, oh man, in 24 minutes or 26 minutes, I'm not going to be able to put anything decent.
Yeah, it was definitely tough.
Well, and I just that week I just didn't schedule right. So I had like it was like late. Like I know I have to do this stuff earlier in the week, so I have time to troubleshoot.
Yeah. How long was, so like my question 3, and since we've already all submitted, I can kind of show it. My question 18.
Oh, you mean this is your 18 or whatever, right? Yeah.
Is this long, right? So it goes from line
700 to,
yeah, so it's 150 lines long.
Wow.
And some of these obviously you can shorten, right? Like instead of having all my variables like this, you can be like int is down here. So like all of these can go away. And there's a couple comments in here as well, but yeah, it's like a monstrosity of nested ifs.
And so that's the one that has, like you said, 21 permutations. So how many primary else or else ifs do you have? Did you look at that?
I didn't.
You have like 2 nested inside each one too.
Yeah. And I think the way I approached it may not have been the most efficient even. But I basically check every single potential permutation.
Well, I noticed Kip made the comment about his one line having like every variable almost in it or whatever. Remember?
Yeah, that seems intense.
I know. I was like, oh geez, I can't even imagine.
But yeah, nothing like, there was nothing like this in assignment 4. Thankfully. I think assignment 4, my total length was 600 lines, including copying in the questions into into my compiler. So probably closer to like 500.
You put the question right in your compiler too, eh? And then just copy and paste right out of it.
I started bringing it in just so I wasn't tabbing between the compiler or VS Code and
Yes.
and Word, just because I wanted like the full screen size.
Yes.
Just made it a little bit easier for me.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess if folks are confident with the assignment and the the technical aspects of it, we can wrap this up. Feel free to message on the group chat if we run into any sort of major issues. I'm happy to chat through them as well.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.
Cool. Alrighty. Have a good one.
You too.
Okay, you too.